Well, hello. Welcome to tonight's extravaganza, tonight's webinar, How to Discover Your Financial Aid Pot of Gold. My name is Andy O. Lockwood, at least it is tonight. Happy St. Patty's Day. Hopefully you guys are sober enough to enjoy tonight's presentation, or perhaps not being sober will help you enjoy it even more. Welcome. And I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to you guys about how to get money for financial aid. And I just want to say before we get started, everything out of my mouth you should believe, because what says trustworthy more than a guy on the internet dressed up like an idiot? Thank you. So let me just see if everyone can see and hear us okay. Who is joining us here in the chat here? Carolyn, Carrie Dean, happy St. Patty's Day to you too. Pearl Lockwood in the chat. Michael Carey, nice job on Netflix. Yeah, today was my Netflix debut, not as a viewer, but for 45 seconds there. All right, Srini from Pennsylvania, I know. Stuart from Syracuse. Yeah, let us know where you're watching from. James Sullivan, aka Sully. Should be a few Sullys here on St. Patrick's Day. So, all right, looks like I'm coming in loud and clear. And, oh, Wally saw it too. All right, very, very cool. From LA. Nice. All right. So I have a good presentation for you tonight. We're going to be focusing on the money. It's been a while since I've given a presentation like this. Not just dressed like an idiot, but also the content focused on financial aid and merit aid and other strategies to give money. And I'm excited to share this with you because, like I said, it's been a while. I like doing these. The ground rules, because you know you have to have rules, are that I am going to be sharing my slides. It's difficult for me to monitor the chat. That's why I have Pearl helping me here behind the scenes, not in a costume, just to ruin that image. But if you could flag your questions as a question, that'll help me and Pearl identify them as such, and I will do my best to get those questions answered after I finish up with my slides. Just, you know, we have more than 150 people registered. We have a max of 150 who can attend in the room, so I'm not sure if everyone's going to be able to make it tonight. But usually we get 80% of people showing up. So consider yourself in rarefied air. You are inside the red velvet rope, so to speak. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this. So the other thing I want to say is, and we say this every once in a while because people join us at different times. Your best bet is to shut everything down. I don't know if Pearl, you put that in chat yet, but shut everything else down, unless you have Netflix on and you're watching the college scandal. But shut everything else down that might be sapping the bandwidth, because sometimes people have problems. No matter what platform I use, this is a new one, Demio, but no matter what platform I use, there's always some people who say the screen froze, or they can't hear, or am I supposed to see anything? I can only hear, that type of thing. It's usually because of something local going on your end, either at your actual laptop or phone, or however you're watching, or it could be someone else in the house. So if they could just back off the internet bandwidth for about an hour, that would probably make your experience a lot better. Okay, so those are my opening comments. Who else is coming on here? All right. Yeah, it looks like you guys can all hear and see me. Felicia, Lori, Wade, Gail, Lafayette Hill, Gabriella, Sophia, West Hempstead. Nice. Okay. Let's go right to the slides. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. Hopefully you guys can see and hear me. Just let me know in chat if you can see what I'm trying to do here with my slides. The Financial Aid Pot of Gold, starring, saw that already. All right, so you guys can hear and see. Looks like terrific. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so here's what we're going to cover today. Loopholes and landmines that you can use to slash your college costs, even if you think there's no way you'll qualify for anything. talk about some mistakes to avoid, brief discussion of selected changes on the docket for in the financial aid rules that came out in January 2021, and a case study or two of how to negotiate with colleges. That seems to be a popular topic. And I'm also going to mix in some tips, particularly for business owners and divorced families. Divorced and separated families are a big topic of the rule changes, by the way. And business owners, we have a ton of business owners as clients. I think more than somewhere around 50% of our clients are business owners. So I want to make sure I cover that. This presentation is for parents who have no idea how on God's green earth they'll be able to cough up 70 or 80 grand a year per child. It's also for parents who could write the check, but they don't really get the return on investment proposition of paying full price, which, spoiler alert, I do not either. Anyone who admits that they just don't have a clue about where to get started, and they're just stressed out about not just paying. I'm going to talk a little bit about tips on maximizing your ability to get into college. That's a big part of our practice too. But this, for the most part, today's presentation is geared toward getting the money. But they are interchangeable. I mean, they go hand in hand. So before I start, just take a breath. Imagine that you had a magic wand and you could all of a sudden comfortably afford your child's dream college without any stress or sleepless nights about paying, or the nagging feeling that you're getting ripped off, while other families somehow get discounts. You could have a magic wand and just get rid of all that. That's what I'm trying to do here. And of course, without racking up debt, either for your child or you or both. I'm going to try to keep things positive here, but I just want to point out to you that if you don't pay attention, I mean, I think I have an inflated self-sense of my own worth, but I really want you to pay attention because, and that, by the way, that means shutting off everything that could be sapping your bandwidth, your Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, probably not that, Netflix, unless you're watching the documentary that I appear in. No, I'm sorry. If you don't pay attention to this stuff, then you might risk crushing your child's dreams by telling her that you can't afford to send her to the school that she got into, or burying your child under thousands of dollars of high-rate, high-fee debt. I know exactly what that feels like, and I don't want that for any of our kids, yours or mine. If you don't pay attention, you could be, what the hell is this? You could be needlessly forking your hard-earned money over to rip off colleges or delaying your retirement. That's why it's important to pay attention. So just to be clear. Okay. If you're wondering who we are and why you should pay attention, I've written a few books. Each of them made it to bestseller. I'm also a trainer of other financial advisors. So a lot of times I get questions from financial advisors because they're not really experts on the college process. So I have a training program for them, FYI. And I just shamelessly mentioned before, I'm briefly in a Netflix documentary that was really good, according to Pearl, starring Matthew Modine, called Operation Varsity Blues. And most important, it's not this braggy stuff. It's about the results that we're able to get for clients. So like Ralph and Sherry Rizzuto, they never thought they'd qualify for anything, and they sent 3 kids to private school without having to eat mac and cheese every night. The Salzbanks in Port Washington were nervous that none of their friends were getting any money, and all of a sudden they started getting their offers coming in from schools like Albany and Syracuse and BU. And she said we made the process less stressful and easy and actually fun, which I think is an exaggeration, but I do appreciate the comment. Buddy of mine, Mike Levy, who's also does my printing, he owns a Minuteman press business, says that before we met, he used to get chills and practically hyperventilate, and we saved him more than $10,000 a year. I'd mentioned this before. We also help with the application process. By the way, as early as ninth grade. I do think that's on the early side, but some people start with us then. That's a different program. And occasionally we get feedback from not just the clients, but the admissions officers at elite schools who said that the kids had great applications and they should be proud. And Julie here attributes a lot of that to my advice, which I appreciate. And this is one of the best testimonials I've ever gotten, which Dennis O'Hara is now a superintendent on Long Island, but he said that he got real results. Okay, so just really quickly, sometimes people say you're in such an interesting business or a weird business. How did you get in here? In a way, it chose me. Kind of odd to say that. It wasn't just me choosing it, but I went to a very expensive school. My dad was a photojournalist and a writer. That's him on the left. I am not the illegitimate son of Fidel Castro. But my dad covered Fidel. He wrote a book about him. And he was a freelancer his whole life. And what that really meant was, even though he was very accomplished, he didn't make much money at all. He was also a super smart guy, Ivy educated, Yale and Columbia, always figured things out himself, didn't see the value of hiring a specialist, i.e. a me, back then when I was applying to college. Not that I think there were many people like me around back then. And his feeling was, look, don't worry about all the debt, all the loans. It's going to work out. Don't worry about it. Well, how did that work out for young Andy? Not so good. I racked up between college and law school more than $100,000 worth of debt. And it was awful. I mean, it wasn't just the payments. It was just being, kind of saddled with that emotionally. The being turned down for rental applications because my credit was in the toilet, that type of stuff. I learned about all this stuff after the fact, the hard way. And you, because you're smart enough, and I want to tip my hat to you, you're attending this webinar, you don't have to learn things the hard way. You can learn things the easy way. So that's what we're going to be covering today. And fast forward now, I've got 4 kids of my own. Yes, there's a 4th one tucked on Pearl's hip there. And we've sworn this oath to each other that we will never let them endure anything remotely like what I had to go through. So that's what I hope, not just for our kids, but for your kids and anyone who we help. And just a quick Captain Obvious statement here. The less you spend on college, the more money you have for other things like actually retiring, actually paying off your mortgage, maybe even some fun stuff like some vacations. You have more money for anything other than just saving it. Things are so weird in the economy these days. Wouldn't it be nice just to have it? So I just had to point that out too. All right, so now let's get right into the nuts and bolts here. Get a lot of questions about the financial aid forms, the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. People are like, what the heck is that? Where do you start? What is it? And that's just the beginning. I mean, there's so many other terms that I feel like are just, so many acronyms and confusion. I'm going to cover some of this stuff. So there's the FAFSA, there's the CSS Profile, which is an additional financial aid application that some schools require. I'll discuss that. There's something called the EFC, which is changing in 2023 to the SAI. Wow, that's a great change. That's the only change. Thank you, Congress. You've really justified your existence. Okay, I don't mean to get too political right away. And then some of these other terms that may or may not come up in this talk. And I understand if you feel overwhelmed, you have plenty of company because they don't make this stuff easy. It's not your fault. You would think that you could turn to experts who could help you with this stuff, but frankly, guidance counselors are overwhelmed and untrained. Most guidance counselors have 400 to 500 kids that they're supposed to be dealing with, depending on the high school. The average is 400 something. Accountants and CPAs don't have any in-depth knowledge for the most part of the financial aid rules, but they still give out a lot of information, which is a problem without admitting that they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So if you're getting advice from your accountant or CPA, there's a good chance that it's not right. Ditto for financial advisors. They're not trained, and sometimes they're commissioned for putting people into products that aren't necessarily suitable. I'll leave it at that in the interest of time here. And then what about other parents? You know, a lot of parents give advice who've been through it, but sometimes you have to wonder whether they're competing with you or their kids are competing with your kids. You've got to wonder what their expertise is. Just because they went through it once doesn't mean they know everything. They certainly probably don't know what your tax returns show or the financial generosity of each college on your list and so forth. So it's okay to talk to all these types of people, but I just would take every bit of advice with a big hunk of salt, not just a grain, but a big hunk. This is why it's so confusing. The financial aid rules, which are being quote unquote simplified, are going to look worse than this. This is actually from the Department of Education. I rely on this chart in virtually every presentation I do just to show you, look, you may think that the process is relatively easy because that's kind of what a lot of accountants think, but it's really not. I mean, these are the regulations and the playbook, so to speak, behind the easy form, the FAFSA, which is, I don't know if you can see this, right in the middle, free application for federal student aid. So it's not easy. Also, other pressures, tuition has skyrocketed compared to virtually every other index that's out there. Student debt has increased, every year. It's now currently $1.7 trillion in as of 2020, according to CNBC, which is a huge increase. Kids graduating school these days have a hard time getting jobs that require college degrees. Most employers say that graduates are unprepared for their workforce. There's a ton of defaults that increases every year. This is all stuff that was a trend before coronavirus, which just exaggerated all these things. So it is, I won't belabor this, but it is tough out there. The odds are stacked against you and your kids. You just have to face facts. But we're going to talk about the solution. It's me. I am that billionaire who is paying everyone's student loans. No, I'm kidding. That was an actual story that I was interviewed for, but my son saw it on TV. He's like, Dad, it looks like you're the billionaire. That was wishful thinking. No, we're going to work through the solution, though. It's a little bit more complicated, but not overly complicated. So let's talk about, first, some ways that they're out to get you. The colleges and the Department of Education are out to get more money from you than you want to fork over. One of the things that is also not politically correct is that if you step back and think about this, in the financial aid rules and regulations that colleges adhere to, responsible families who live below their means are actually punished for doing the right thing, for doing those things, whereas families who are irresponsible are rewarded for doing the wrong thing. Now, I'm not saying that everyone who gets financial aid is irresponsible. What I am saying, because many people get financial aid who need it, and we have a ton of those types of families in our practice, and I'm not suggesting that they were irresponsible. However, let's face it, there are plenty of families that took a whole bunch of vacations when they couldn't afford it, that bought fancy cars and have car leases of $1,000 a month or more, who paid up for big houses in luxury neighborhoods, but they can't afford furniture, inside. They also get rewarded in the financial aid formulas, which personally galls me, but I've made it a mission to help everyone get more money from college, particularly the families who are responsible and live under their means, pay their bills, etc. So let's talk about some secrets here. And I just want to warn you again that this may be some stuff that you have not heard from other people, such as guidance counselors, maybe even other college advisors, for all I know. So it's up to you to decide whether what I'm saying makes sense or not. I'm not here to try to convince you. I'm just sharing you my truths. Everyone has their own truths. So secret number one is the home equity trap. Roughly 400 colleges will penalize you for owning a home. Like, a lot of people think that it doesn't matter if you own a house. It really depends on the college. So most colleges in the country, out of the 4,000, do not penalize you for owning a house, your primary residence, not investment properties, by the way. But there's roughly 400 colleges that do penalize you for owning a house. So it's about 10% of the colleges out there. Frankly, the government would rather issue student loans and make interest off those than allow you to use your mortgage, your maybe an equity line. They make this may be outdated, but as of I think 2019, the amount of interest that the Department of Education earned on student loans, $1.6 billion, and there's parent loans that are not part of this figure, which has got to be another couple hundred million, I would think, at least. Okay, secret number 2, colleges penalize you for earning and saving, but I will show you how to level the playing field at the 11th hour. So this is just a recitation of what I said before. Secret 3, some savings are completely penalty-free. There are 4 exempt loopholes. So I'm going to go over those. Are you guys interested in those? Tell me if you are interested in hearing about the loopholes, say yes in chat while I take a quick sip of water here. Okay. I hope you're interested because that's what I prepared here. Okay, I see some yeses, some positive reinforcement. Because look, I don't need to show you this stuff. I mean, if you don't want to see it, maybe your hearts aren't strong enough to learn all this exciting stuff. I don't know. I don't need you. I can do this alone, to quote Steve Martin. All right, so I'm going to go over those loopholes. The 4th secret is that you'll never hear about these loopholes by chance because, what I mentioned before, guidance counselors aren't trained. CPAs know the tax code, not these loopholes. Financial advisors sell products and earn commissions, but don't understand the rules so much. And colleges are businesses, and they're not going to exactly say, here's how you get more money from us, buddy. It's more like, fill out the form and you get what you get, and you don't get upset. Here's a secret that I'm not going to dwell on, but this is really, really important. It's just outside the scope of this. Colleges have different agendas than you, or agendai, than you do, and your kids do. So they care a lot about things like their rank, support from their alumni, certain social engineering things like making sure there's enough diversity, pursuing money from the federal government for researching and publishing arcane projects that no one ever reads or cites and cares about, and they care about filling their seats, which they call enrollment managing, and they will leverage their financial aid awards in order to achieve that. So none of this stuff has anything to do with grade scores and other attributes of our kids, and it's not fair. But you know what? Who said it was supposed to be fair? Did anyone ever mention that to you? You may have implicitly hoped that things were going to be fair, but honestly, come on, what is fair in life? This is not fair. But that's okay. I'm just telling you this so you understand the rules. And it may sound cynical. I don't mean this to sound cynical. I just want to give you the facts. I'm the Joe Friday of college advisors. Just the facts, man. Here are some little known facts that should cheer you up, hopefully. The average discount at a private college nationally is now 52.6%. That is off of tuition, and that is a combination of need-based aid, which I'll discuss, and merit aid. Overall, between public and private colleges, both, not just private, the average discount is slightly less. I think it's about 5% less, so about 47%. Most money goes to parents who are the highest earners in the top 25% of income. 6-figure earning families. Here's another one. At any given college, roughly 25% of families are paying full price. Only 25%. They are subsidizing the other 75%. So, hey guys, which group would you rather be in? Type the answer in. No, I'm kidding. That's a rhetorical question. You don't have to do that. But the point is that you don't have to pay full price. And the final comment here is that when colleges give out money based on merit, it's not just about grades and scores only. It's whatever the college decides deserves merit aid. So frequently, it's got nothing to do with grades and scores. They help, but whether someone gets money or not may not be solely dependent on GPA and a high SAT or ACT. It can be, though. It's just not always. Need-based aid sometimes gets fudged a lot also. So if you have two families who look the same on paper, for example, but one's an athletic recruit, somehow, even though that family is identical financially to the non-athletic recruit, usually the recruit gets more money, even if the college says we are 100% need-based. I can tell you that from personal experience as a recruit at a Division III school. Okay. So how's this all work? Now we're going to get into some formulaic stuff. This is a little dry. I'm going to do my best, though, to present it in a way that you will retain it. So there is a financial aid formula currently. This is early 2021 here, which is cost of attendance minus your, oops, that's a typo. It's actually expected family contribution, but I mentioned before that's going to change in 2023, so I'm just going off of the current rules here. So COA minus EFC equals your financial need, which is what the financial aid formula indicates that you are eligible for. It is not necessarily what you will actually get. So what you're eligible for is not what you receive at most colleges, for a variety of reasons, including they don't have unlimited budgets, which shouldn't really shock you if you think about it. So cost of attendance minus expected family contribution equals your need. So expected family contribution, which again will be SAI, the Student Aid Index, spoiler alert for 2023, is the key here. It's because the lower your expected family contribution, the more aid you get, the higher your EFC, the less aid you get. So you want to lower your expected family contribution. It's based on 70-something factors, but the most important ones are your income, your savings, age of parents, and number of kids in college. So quick comment here. The more kids you have in college at the same time, not who are headed to college, but in college, undergrad, the lower your expected family contribution. Until 2023, that goes away. As of now. I believe there's some petitioning action going on to change that, but that was one of the big stupid changes, that if you have 3 kids in college and you make the same income and have the same savings as another family with 1 child in college, your expected family contribution will be the same. It's currently not, but it will be the same in 2023, the way the current rules are, which is so dumb. But I digress. Actually, I don't. That's important, but I don't want to get caught up in that. So yes, your expected family contribution will change and become the student aid index. Why? Who cares? I mean, it's just, I think it's really stupid. So I'm not going to belabor it here. But so the formula will be cost of attendance minus SAI, student aid index, equals financial need. But currently it's not. Okay. Overly confusing. Who gives a crap? Let's go. So here's your expected family contribution in action. Let's say that you can lower your expected family contribution legally and ethically, thank you very much, from $60,000 to $45,000. You can see in column A, that situation, that family is eligible for no money. Cost of attendance minus EFC, $60,000 minus $60,000. I'm using round numbers, is 0. But if you're able to lower your EFC in column B, you're now all of a sudden eligible for $15,000. So wouldn't you like to know how to do that? I'm going to tell you that anyway. So I already made the joke about I can do this alone, so blah, blah, blah. So let's talk about how to do that. But don't take your eye off the ball. Lower your EFC, that means you get more money. You're eligible for more money. It's that simple. Before we get there, let me also talk to you about how income is treated, because that's actually way more important than how much you have saved. They're both important. But your income, you see in that column where it says 22 to 47%, your income is penalized by 22 to 47%. I'm going to give you an example so you understand this. And then you see where it says 5.64%, parent assets are penalized at 5.64%. Child assets, if you go right below that, the lower right corner, child assets are penalized at up to 25%. So when I say penalized, I mean your EFC is boosted. Remember, you want a lower EFC. Does that make sense to you guys? The lower your EFC, the better. The higher, the worse. That makes sense to you guys? Say yes in chat, because I can come back and explain that more when I come out of my slides here. I can't see the chat right now in this slide. Okay, so let's go through some examples here. But I want to definitely focus on the assets because that's where the loopholes are. So just to give you some numbers, if you've saved $100,000, if you put that in your name, your penalty is only $5,000 and change. But in your child's name, you lose $25,000 of eligibility. You understand that? So it's worse to have money in your kids' names. And that's per year, by the way. If you have it, every year you'll be penalized that way. And that's why I'm constantly saying in financial aid, it's not how much you have saved, it's where. That's actually a quote or a paraphrase of a quote in the Wall Street Journal from way back when, but that's exactly what that means. If you have money saved in your kids' names, and I'll describe what that means, don't worry, that is bad. So let's turn back to income, just so you can understand this. This is a simplified, everything I'm saying is simplified, so there's nuances, but I don't want to take 5 hours to do this with you, because I'm sure you have other things to do. So if you make an extra $10,000, your EFC will be boosted. Again, you're penalized by up to $4,700 just in general. And that means all income, including untaxed income. Now, the asterisk is there for a reason. I'll get to that. Just as a rule of thumb, use 30%. So if you make $150,000, your expected family contribution might be $50,000 or slightly more, about a third of that. Because not all income is counted. There's an exclusion. Sometimes people say, well, how much is too much? If I make over a certain amount, what is that amount actually? And the answer is that there actually is not a magic ceiling currently, particularly because if you have 2 or more children in college at the same time, you can have a higher income than someone who has just 1 kid in college. But once that changes, we will start to see some ceilings. So my rule of thumb, which I can just, I hope you just treat this only as a rule of thumb, is that if you are applying to private colleges who have more money, keep that in the back of your mind, by the way, my experience is that the closer you get to $200,000 in adjusted gross income, the harder it is to qualify. So if you're in the 150, 175 range and a little higher, depending on the schools, some schools are more generous than others, you could still qualify at a private college. But if you're applying to state schools, that number is like 50 grand or 60 grand sometimes. You're not going to qualify for a whole lot once you surpass those levels. That's just rule of thumb. There are exceptions. And there's merit aid too, which I'm not talking about right now. So keep that in the back of your mind also. That's 2 things in the back of your mind right now. I mentioned this before. Things are changing in 2023, including treatment of untaxed income. So certain types of untaxed income are slated to no longer count against you, which will be great. And one of those is payments from an ex-spouse in a settlement agreement, I believe. But I'm not dealing with these now because that doesn't happen until 2023. All right, let's get back to the assets. What counts against you? Cash, checking, savings, stocks, bonds, yes, 529s. These all are part of the financial aid formula. These get penalized if they're in your name, by 5.64%. Okay? Sorry, just it's basically stuff that you can use to pay for college. The financial aid formulas are about your resources to pay for college. So it's generally stuff you have in the bank and investments, not other stuff. So this is what I mean by the good stuff. You guys ready for the good stuff? The exemptions? Of course you are. I can answer my own questions. So in the directions to the FAFSA, which are buried, and most people never see this, so you now have this unbelievable edge over everyone. If you look at the directions, it says what's included, number 1, number 2, but here's what's not included, and that's number 3, number 4. So the loopholes are buried in the financial aid formulas. They're not sketchy, they're not crazy or unethical. They're right here in black and white. So let's go through some of these loopholes. Shall we? Oh, we shall. So there are 4, I call it the 4 horsemen of it's actually 4.5 exemptions or loopholes in the financial aid formulas for the FAFSA. So the things that do not count against you on the FAFSA are these 4: retirement accounts, primary residence, annuities, and life insurance with cash value. Not term, but life insurance with cash value. These are the big 4. The other way to think about this, if you want to go negative, is that if you mistakenly include these things, you are sabotaging yourself because they should not be included. So if you are whipping through the FAFSA and ask you to write down your the amount you have saved up in investments, and you're like, oh, I've got like $500,000 in my 401k. I'll put that there, and then I'll put my checking save. You're going to hurt your eligibility. Very easy to do that, but you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot. Read the directions carefully and understand that your 401k, your 403b, your 457, your pension, whatever it is, does not go on the FAFSA. Okay, the reason I have these little asterisks next to primary residence and annuities is that this stuff counts against you on the FAFSA. I'm sorry, these are exemptions on the FAFSA, which is the federal form, the free application for federal student aid. But other forms, if your college requires them, like the CSS Profile, which I will make some comments on, do factor in these things: primary residence and annuities, certain annuities. So it really depends on where you're applying and what financial aid applications are required. I know I'm covering a lot of stuff really quickly, but I'm trying to give you the basics. I'm not withholding anything. I'm just trying to give you all the basics so that if you end up doing the financial aid applications on your own, which many people do, I mean, that is a service we provide, but the vast majority of people in the country do them on their own. You need to be very hyper vigilant about reading the directions and figuring out what's included and what's not. All right, now let's talk about sheltering, because hiding is a sleazy word. Understand that if you have $250,000 saved in the wrong places and you move them into one of these exemptions, usually an annuity or a life insurance policy, and I am not a financial advisor, so don't. I'm not going to give you specifics because that would not be ethical, and I'm an amateur. I'm not qualified to do that. But formulaically, $250,000 in the wrong place hurts you about $14,000 because that's about 5% and change, and that's per year. So if you reposition it, you will increase your eligibility for money by that amount per year. Is this kosher? Thank you, Tevye. Well, look, if you take tax deductions, on it's the same thing as far as I'm concerned. You're trying to reduce your taxes. If you have an elderly parent, grandparent, I guess, and they're trying to improve their eligibility for Medicaid, there's techniques that lawyers do to move money out of their names. Same type of thing. Best analogy I can give is my favorite quote here: "You must pay taxes, but there's no law that says you got to leave a tip." That's how I feel about financial aid. You have to pay tuition, but there's no law that says you have to overpay. Overpaying is a choice; it's not an obligation. So regular strategies that we advise our clients on include transferring money out of children's names to exempt accounts, strategic use of home equity, and occasionally insurance and annuities. They are the right vehicles. But I have to say this because I did practice law for 5 years. I'm still a recovering attorney. You can't just willy-nilly start doing stuff like this the way sometimes I feel like a lot of parents do, or they're pressured to do by financial advisors, because there are pitfalls. You have to understand how these products work. You have to make sure they're going to potentially work for the colleges that your child is likely to get into. You have to look at the tax consequences if you're moving money around. This does not work for everyone. It works for maybe 1 out of 4 families that I consult, and I'm talking specifically about moving money around from one bucket to another so that you improve your eligibility. So it doesn't work for everyone, and there are significant pitfalls. However, when the stars align and everything works, it's terrific. So that's all I'll say here, except for the same stuff I'm saying here. You got to look at the tax consequences, penalties, how long you have to lock your money up, whether they're suitable in general, and the generosity of colleges on your list. Okay? So I just talked about that. I'm moving along. I will get to your questions. Put them in chat. Pearl I believe, is flagging them as questions if you're not doing that yourself, and then I'll get to them. By the way, are you guys finding this helpful? I should have asked that earlier. Now that we're about a half hour into this, just let me know that I'm going in the right direction for you, and I'm delivering on what I promised. Good. All right. All right. Good. Thank you. Doing my best. And again, this is not a tease. I'm giving you everything. I can't dump out 20 plus years of knowledge here, but I'm trying to give you everything. So if you decide that you want to tackle all this stuff on your own, you should have a huge leg up on the whole process. Okay. Let's do some 5 fastest facts. Say that 5 times fast. Number 1, the FAFSA, Free Application for Federal Student Aid, required by all colleges. Sometimes colleges say, even if you're not eligible for aid, we want you to file the FAFSA also to be considered for any type of money we give. That many colleges, not all, but many colleges require the FAFSA no matter what. Currently, I think it's 108 questions actually, but that's being slashed in 2023 to roughly 36, I believe. The FAFSA is primarily used to allocate federal funds, not only, but primarily. It's relatively straightforward on its face. A lot of people think that and say that, but that can be deceptive because of the 1,100 pages of regulations and that god-awful chart that I showed you before lurking behind the FAFSA. So simple on its face, but that's the tip of the iceberg. Okay, now the CSS profile I mentioned before is kind of like a root canal without Novocaine. It's required by approximately 400 colleges in addition to the FAFSA, not in lieu of, but in addition to the FAFSA. 200 plus questions, 23 pages, used mostly by colleges that have their own money, because the FAFSA is not complicated enough. It's not accurate enough. That's why they use this other form to really make sure that you need their money. And that is why not only do I not think, that's a double negative, that the profile is going to change and become more simple. I think if anything, it'll be a little more complicated to offset the simplicity of the FAFSA. And I predict that there's going to be more colleges requiring the CSS profile once the simplified FAFSA goes into effect, because colleges want to, again, they want to allocate their budgets very judiciously. It is not straightforward looking at all compared to the FAFSA. I gave you that root canal joke, but that's how I've heard it described, not me. And the big thing is that it factors more things than the FAFSA does. That it's more complicated because it takes a more nuanced look at all your resources, including your primary residence, which I mentioned before, and including annuities. But there's many other things too. Here's a screenshot. By the way, guess who's supposed to fill this out? If you can read these questions, enter the amount your parents have in their cash, checking savings, and in their cash savings and checking accounts. Enter the total value of your parents' assets. They put that in bold. Held in the names of your brothers and sisters under the age of 19. What is the total current market value of your parents' investments? Do not include your parents' home, business, farm, real estate, or retirement plans. What do your parents owe in their investments? Right? These are for the kids to fill out. I don't know about how your relationship with your children. We have 2 kids in college currently. We have 2 on the way. We did not let them fill this out. Okay, I don't recommend that. These are tricky questions too. So that's another tip right there. Another big tip: don't let your kids touch this. Okay, now let's talk about some mistakes. And there's 2 types of mistakes. There's mistakes of omission and commission. So I mentioned this before, but it's really important because I know people are still going to make this mistake no matter how aggressive I am here. If you overshare, if you tell them information that they don't need to know, like on the FAFSA, you include stuff, the value of your primary residence, you will sabotage yourself. That's a mistake of commission. If you blow a deadline, that's a mistake of omission, because the deadlines for the forms vary from college to college. There's not one universal deadline. You've got to look all those up. It's a lot to keep track of here, folks. Easy stuff like just transposing dates of birth or social security numbers. I can't tell you how many times that Pearl, my wife, my lassie, who's again in the chat here, if you have any questions. Finds mistakes on tax returns that accountants made in the children's social security numbers or their dates of birth. And you may think, well, what's the big deal? The big deal is that if you are submitting your FAFSA and the common application, which should also include your social security number, but that information does not jibe with the tax returns, then that's going to create a bottleneck because they will flag that for verification, and you'll get notices about data not matching up, and you've got to correct it. And if you delay too long or you miss that email, which happens a lot, guess what? You could be, out of luck. So all these little things matter, and I'm just giving you some of the more common ones, but this is not an exhaustive list at all. Sometimes people think, well, I filed the FAFSA. I didn't realize I had to file the CSS profile too. No one told me that. We hear that literally every year from families. Just understand that even little teensy-weensy little errors can make you lose money. So I try to give you the high-level strategic stuff about loopholes, but I'm also rounding out that discussion by saying it's not just about the intellectual stuff. It's also about the mundane data entry, clerical stuff. When is the timing? When should you file everything? Well, if you looked at the FAFSA, it says, and this is an older one, but no earlier than October 1st, we must receive your application no later than June 30th. Yeah, okay, so you might think, all right, I have till June 30th, right? No. It's whatever the school says its deadline is. You might have a priority deadline of November 1 or November 15th. As long as you get them in before or on your priority deadline, you're fine. But if you have a deadline of November 15th and you submit June 30th, come on, you're not going to get anything. Another note on timing: if you have someone graduating 2022, then they are looking at your income from 2020. There's a 2-year income look back. So if you have someone graduating 23, then they're looking at your 21 tax returns. This applies only to income, not to assets. So if you have money to move around last minute, you can do that. But the income stuff is a 2-year look back. What do these changes mean that I talked about before? Well, if you are sheltering money from the financial aid formulas and there's tax consequences, like you are selling stuff that's going to have a capital gain or something, you're better off doing it before the year that the colleges are looking at to avoid a paper trail. I know it sounds sleazy, but it's all legal. I know I sound defensive now, but it is. Your body of work. If you are thinking about, well, what do I need to do to maximize my chances of getting in? What clubs, what courses should I take? Extracurricular activities, out of school, extracurriculars in school, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of times people don't find that out until they have their first meeting with their guidance counselors about college in 11th grade. And they're like, wow, I would have taken more APs if you told me that earlier. Why am I finding this out now instead of 2 years ago? So understand that this timing starts a lot earlier than people usually think about it. By the way, that is not a commercial to hire a private advisor like me in 9th grade. We do happen to have a handful of families each year who start that time. But a lot of times kids aren't ready to take that advice. So my best advice about when to start is whenever you're ready, whenever your kid's going to benefit from that advice, but not earlier than that. Colleges, I've been spending a lot of time talking about the financial aid formulas, but there are also non-formulaic factors that colleges consider. So a real quick case study here it was an unsuccessful negotiation. We had a client a couple years ago who got into Northwestern, but also early action to Michigan. Admitted to both places, initially Northwestern. They gave no money. Northwestern gave, and the hang-up was that the dad owned like 100 properties. And our argument was like, look, just because he owns all these doesn't mean that they're actually worth something, because if he sold them all today, he might even have to come to the closing with cash. He wouldn't net out any proceeds to be to be fair. So we explained all that, and we got a goose egg. But then later, Michigan, who looked at the exact same financial aid forms, the CSS profile, They came back and gave the kid practically a free ride. He had to pay like $12,000 or something to go to Michigan. So we're like, come on, Northwestern, can you please see it the way Michigan did? And Northwestern said, no, we don't. So he got out of his early decision offer obligation, because you have that ability to, if you don't like the financial aid offer. And he went to Michigan. And I'm giving you the short version. There was a lot of agonizing and hand-wringing, but they were worried that there'd be some sort of black mark on them for getting out of their early decision commitment, which I'm using air quotes for. The short answer is no, you can get out of it if you don't like the financial aid offer. And that's what they did. They exercised their financial out. Kids going to Michigan, and he's kicking butt, and parents are hardly paying anything. But my point here is that each school looked at the exact same data and came to wildly different results, because that's CSS Profile. All right, so let's talk about how to multiply odds of getting money from college. Let's say you don't qualify for need-based aid. There's more merit funding out there than need-based aid. So remember, I mentioned that before. So the best bet is have a bunch of colleges on there where you're in the top 10 to 20, 25% of the compared to your competitors in terms of your grades and scores. So in other words, the colleges that you have to scratch and claw your way to get into are not as likely to give you money. But if you apply to colleges where you're at the top, they're more likely to roll out the red carpet. It also helps to apply to colleges that compete with each other. So it could be colleges in the same conference, or it could be colleges that are reputable, athletic conference, or it could be colleges that are reputable in certain programs, such as communications. I have an example of a negotiation coming up where that was the case. And understand that the private schools tend to have the most money, even though they have a higher sticker price. You're more likely to get a bigger discount at a private school, so your net price frequently is less at a quote unquote high sticker price private school compared to a state university. All right, let's go into this case study here. Then I'm almost gonna wrap up after we do this. So this is a client of mine, great guy. Every time I do this, I use him as example. Someone says, "Hey, I know him." So if you're local, this is Rick. He owns a great wings place, Wings Plus in Port Washington, where I've had way too many wings. And initially, his daughter got a nice award from the University of Spoiled Children. University of Southern California. And she was psyched, but he was like, "No, I really need more money." So I said, okay, let's ask them for more money. So let me give you the steps. First of all, a lot of people don't know that you can even ask for more money. So let me just say it here again. You don't ask, you don't get. This is an offer. It's not here's your money, take it or leave it. In this case, Alexis also got into, she was majoring in communication. So when she told me that, I said, okay, well, let's also come up with a few colleges that compete with the University of Second Choice. University of Southern California. So funny. And in communications. So Syracuse Newhouse was another one. GW, I think, was another one. They all came back with great offers, of course. That's the whole point here. It also helps when you're negotiating to give them new information, the college that you are applying to. So if you say something like, I need more money because I pay a lot in property taxes here in, San Francisco or the Boston area or wherever you live, in Long Island. That is not new information. They know that because that's baked in. They don't consider that anyway. They know your zip code from your application. But the new information could be, well, we've got these offers from other schools that are we're considering for financial reasons only. That's the only reason. Okay. Don't be aggressive. Like, come on, are you guys kidding me? What can you do for me? Actual, it might even be a verbatim quote, but don't do that. That's an example. You want to be on the same side of the table as them. Look, USC is our top choice school. Please, if there's anything you do to meet or exceed these other offers, we'll immediately rush in. rush our application, our housing deposit in. Number 5, in this case, this was a financial aid appeal, but I also instructed Rick, which he forgot to do, and he admits this, so I'm not just throwing him under the bus. Also include all stakeholders. We included admissions also, and that broke the logjam in Rick's case. So USC was her top choice. She got better offers from other schools. We showed USC the other offers, and what happened next was crickets, nothing. I was like, what the heck? What was the problem? He forgot to include admissions. So once we did that, here we go. We were able to increase that award by $30,022. That broke the logjam after weeks of, her crying in her room, him saying, you got to help me out, come on. So that finally worked. All right, a couple quick comments on business owners here. They're treated differently in the financial aid formulas. They have to make more disclosures, but there are also key loopholes. Quick case study. Tina's daughter got into NYU and a bunch of other expensive schools. She got 0. And then she called me after the fact, said, can you help me? I was like, no, I'm sorry, it's too late. But she was a neighbor, so I took a look at her forms as a courtesy, and immediately I saw the mistake. And I asked her, what percentage of the business do you own? And she said, I'm 50-50 with my husband. And how many employees do you have? And she told me the answer was something like 15. Well, going back to those FAFSA directions, here's exemption number 4.5. The business value does not include the value of a small business if you have fewer than 100 employees. So most businesses under the financial aid rules have a 0 value. To be fair, NYU, which was her top choice school, they looked at both the FAFSA and the CSS profile, which does not have that rule. But here's what happened next. Pearl resubmitted the forms. I wrote the appeal. NYU reevaluated and gave her $25,000 instead of 0. Not bad, especially when you consider that was per year for 3 years running. So big mistake, but buried in the financial aid rules that she was able to overcome. Not bad. All right. Is that helpful for you business owners out there? I know the answer is yes, but I want to hear it anyway. I need the validation. Okay. Here we go here. We're coming down the home stretch. Divorced and separated families. FAFSA requires the custodial parent to file. What does that mean? Currently, the custodial parent is not the parent that takes the kids as a deduction. But keep in mind that some colleges require both custodial and non-custodial parent to file. Just so you keep that also in the back of your mind. That's like the 5th thing. But starting 2023, the custodial parent will be the parent who takes the kid as a deduction, meaning the parent who's supporting the child. So currently, the custodial parent in 2021 is the parent that the kid resides with the majority of time, without regard to the tax deductions. But that changes in 23. So if you're applying to a FAFSA-only school now and in 23, that will change. If you're applying to a CSS Profile college now and in 23, it's probably going to be about the same thing because the CSS Profile, many of the CSS Profile colleges want both parents' information. So little nuance there. There's other stuff to consider with divorced and separated families, but that is one big change that I don't particularly like that is happening. Okay, so here we go. This is you. You've got 2 choices here. You could either take all this information I gave you and wing it, hope it all works out, or you can get an expert to guide you, someone who has a tested and proven system. You could hire a coach, so to speak, just the same way that LeBron James has all kinds of coaches and Tiger Woods has all kinds of swing coaches, nutrition, apparently not driving coaches, but anyway, maybe he's in the market for that. So you've got these 2 choices. Everyone does. And you may have some questions. So I want to help you answer those questions. You might be wondering, can you do anything to get scholarships or aid? Is your child even looking at the right colleges? Can you even get in anywhere decent? I don't even know the right questions to ask. I'm overwhelmed. Well, what I can offer you, if you are interested in any answers to any of those questions, I normally block out 12 spots per week for free. We call them college strategy session consultations, phone or Zoom. We usually charge $4.99. That is free because because you've now sat through this presentation, and we can. I want to answer all your questions. We'll explore if we're a good fit for you in terms of our programs. There's no pressure to buy or anything. You won't be able to on that call, but at least be seriously interested or reasonably interested. Don't just look for. This is not a freebie. The presentation is the freebie. The one-on-one is to see if we can actually help you. I can't help everyone that we speak with. Sometimes people kind of skeptical, and this is a great comment that I got from Scott Sanders here. He said he wondered if it was all a scam because I was so nonchalant. But his son went to GW, and he got more than 5 times the amount that he invested with me, which was a significant amount that he invested with us. And he said it's the best money he ever spent. We also help kids, I mentioned before, get into top schools, not just top schools, but MIT and Harvard, and she got into Yale. But let me just tell you, I mentioned this before, here's who we can't help. These guys, sorry, not that they're banging down my door here. Don't book me if you're a helicopter or a snowplow, know-it-all parent, if you have an uncoachable kid, if you don't understand return on investment, because we do require a significant investment. So you would get an ROI or an ROA, return on college advisor, because we do require, like I said, a significant investment, but you can see the results that our clients have gotten. So we don't want people who want to be cheap on their way to college success. We offer help with college advising, essays, applications, extracurriculars, financial aid. We do SAT and ACT prep and majors and careers advising, which is actually the most important thing. So my final thoughts to you is that working with us can be the difference between affording your dream college versus telling her that she can't go to the school she deserves. Even one mistake can cost you thousands, even tens of thousands of lost aid that you otherwise deserved. Those are the big reasons people work with us, to get college success without the stress. So maybe you'll send me a note like this. From the moment I walked into your office, I felt an enormous weight lifted off my shoulders. So go ahead, click on the blue button, or maybe it's black, I can't remember, the button and if that doesn't work, you can go to booklockwood.com. You'll be asked to fill out a quick application, then you'll get to my calendar, and then you can book a time for us to chat. Thank you. I'm going to come back on screen here and answer all the questions that I see piling up. Okay. I didn't really need to be wearing that still. Let me take a look here through the questions. And if you have a question, Pearl's been doing her best to flag them as questions, but if you have something that you want me to answer, that's the best way for me to spot it. So, okay. All right. Going in order. Helen Rutledge, who sets the EFC? Well, actually, you do by completing the FAFSA. Once you enter all your information, that spits out the EFC. Now, the EFC is a formula that the Department of Education comes up with. So, in effect, they are also setting the EFC. Carradine, does that EFC change have an effect on 2022 high school grads? No. Are we grandfather? Well, there's no grandfathering. So, so two things. The EFC change goes into effect for 2023. So it will affect people who graduate 2022 because they're going to be in college for 4 years. If you're applying and your 2022 grad goes to a CSS Profile school, then the changes may not matter at all. All right. Christina, how do they look at number of kids in college in divorced families? Because it seems like son number two's offers not taking into account the older brothers in college too. Currently, if you're the custodial parent and you have more than one child in college, that does get factored in. That is beneficial. Gene, is $60,000 the magic number for income? Well, there's no magic number for income. For state universities, that number might be a little bit lower. It might be in the 50s. But there's really no magic number. There's a lot of other factors. You said you noticed that on the net price calculators, NPCs, if you put in 50 to 60,000, you get at least 50% off. But if you put in 60 to 70,000, you have to pay an additional $14,000. Yeah, that really could be the case, but it's probably not the case across the board. But that's a very common observation. So thanks for bringing that up. Rika, is this presentation available online? This is online. So yes. You stumped me on that one. Richard, what is a good EFC to have? A low one. It's all dependent on where you're applying to school. So if you're applying to a school that costs $80,000 and you have an expected family contribution of $70,000, you'll qualify for up to $10,000 off the cost of college. But if you have a $70,000 EFC and you're applying to a college that costs $50,000, then you won't get anything. So it's all relative. Reka, are 529 plans penalized at 25% as well? So the short answer is they're not. They're supposed to be penalized as parent assets. However, in my experience, and I definitely can't prove this, file this away as pure conjecture, that 529 plans can be counted as as child assets at the private schools that make their own rules. That's the best way I can explain it. Sung, 30% income contribution is for all income levels and geographic locations. It's not for all income levels because it's a sliding scale between 22 to 47%, but it's just shorthand. And geographic location is not a factor, which is one of the many annoying flaws in the system. Carrie Dehan, what about pensions? Are they exempt? Yes. The money in a pension and the income that comes off a pension, though, are different things. So the money in a pension is exempt. The income that comes off of a pension is not exempt. And I believe that's one of the changes for 23, but I have to double check that. I knew that 2 weeks ago, then it went out of my head. Sonia, can you explain strategic use of home equity line? The short explanation, this is extremely abbreviated, only because you asked, is that the strategic use means, for example, and I've had a handful of clients do this each year. It's never more than a handful. Let's say you're planning on using your home equity line to pay for college. You don't have to be planning to do that, but let's say that you have $300,000 available in your home equity line, and you're applying to a bunch of colleges that penalize you for home equity, mostly CSS Profile colleges. So if you leave that money in the house or you take it out and stick it in your bank account, it's the same thing. But if you withdraw the $300,000 and you put it into an exempt asset, such as an insurance product with cash value, or in some cases an annuity, then all of a sudden you've removed the equity, the $300,000 out of the bricks of your house, and you've stuck it into, if you do this right, a secure, guaranteed, liquid side account that is exempt. So that $15,000, that $300,000 might penalize you about $15,000 if you don't do this, and now you can. But I'm starting to twitch as I say this because this, there's no way this works for everyone. It's kind of an out-of-the-box strategy, but when it works, it really works. So it's a good strategy for a limited number of people. Okay, looks like Barry had the same question. Janine Timpone, can you touch on negotiations? Well, we have a very strict no touching policy. It's the #MeToo era. I'm not going to be the next Andrew Cuomo. Okay, mark my words. That bastard. No, I actually did talk about negotiation. So I'll stop there. Richard, if I had a change of circumstances, I hope I'm amusing you. I mean, I'm amusing me. So I got that going for me. If I had a change of circumstances and my income, I earned less in 2020 than 2019, is it possible to send an amended or supplemental FAFSA in order to lower my EFC? So the answer to that is, assuming that 2019 is the base year that comprises the FAFSA, you wouldn't update your FAFSA, but you would send a letter saying my circumstances have changed. So that is squarely in the four corners of a classic appeal. It's a classic change in circumstances. So that will be factored, but you just don't do it the way that you described. The mechanics are different. You do an appeal. All right. SV, what numbers do you use for FAFSA assets? Highest number during the year or the amount at the end of the year? It's actually neither. It's the value as of the date you file. One more time. The assets, like the value of your checking account or your Bitcoin or whatever you have for investments, as of the date you file, which changes, right? Richard, will you be covering how one goes about appealing a given school's offer to try to get the school she wants to increase her offer? Yeah, I touched on that. Teresa, is the FAFSA the same form for every school? In other words, you fill out it once and send it to the various schools. Yes, the FAFSA is like the Common App, more or less. You fill it out, you send it off. Where the process of applying for aid might be a little bit different from school to school could be if the college, some of the colleges require the CSS Profile, which also is a universal form. However, some schools ask additional information, additional questions. Some schools want to know your credit card balances. Some schools want to know, credit card balances. Some schools want to know the make and model and year of the cars you drive. Those are not on the core CSS Profile, but they may be extra questions that get asked about. This stuff's invasive. I'm not kidding. SV, so assets for FAFSA is the amount of assets at the time of filing the form, not 2-year look back. Correct. The 2-year look back is for income only, not for assets. Gene, is it true that pulling out of ED has negative consequences for the college's future relationships from students from your high school? Okay. My answer is who cares, unless you have other kids in your high school that might apply to the same school, but your duty of loyalty is to your family. What admissions officers will say is they don't really care about this stuff. It's not a big event for them, but there's this feeling, maybe it's a superstition by guidance counselors that this is very bad to do, so don't do it. Again, my answer to that is who gives a flying, you know what, you do you, don't worry about the school district. Sometimes families have different not overlapping, but competing interests with not only colleges, but also high school guidance counselors. Harsh? Yeah. All right, Janine, when negotiating, is this from the student or the parent? Most colleges say, we really want to hear from the student, but I think it's known that if you're talking about financial information, that most kids don't have a clue about the family's financial situation. So you might as well write it as a parent. If you're appealing a merit award, you might be better off with the student writing the letter. But even if it's you writing it as a student, most of the time, all the admissions people and financial aid people know who's actually writing the letters. So I wouldn't get too hung up on that, but when in doubt, go with the student. SV, are there any negative consequences for grandparent financial contributions to consider for FAFSA, EFC/student aid index? Is there a limit? All right. Didn't touch on that, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's one of the changes in the new 2023 financial aid regs. So currently, if a grandparent or another family member, for that matter, sends in money to a college, that will penalize the student's eligibility for aid the next year. So if a grandparent sends in $20,000, next year the kid loses $10,000 of eligibility because the penalty is 50% of that grandparent contribution. Now, one of the good changes of this in this new scheme of the CARES Act, the 5,900-page gobbledygook that came out, is that those contributions by the grandparent will no longer penalize. So that's a great change, but that doesn't happen until 23. Ray Donahue, how are rental investment properties treated? Same way as any other parent asset, they're treated as 5.64% of the equity. So there's the fair market value less any outstanding mortgages. The difference there, the equity, 5.64%. Last call for questions. I see one more here. Lolly Seidenfeld, is grad school similar or a totally different game? Well, yes and no. So the similarity is that it's the same forms, but the difference is that there's just not as much money to go around the way there is for undergrad. So for grad school, you're looking at mostly loans, or if you're smart enough or accomplished enough as an undergrad student, getting a stipend for whatever professor you're doing research for or something like that. It's very program specific. In other words, it's not formulaic the way undergrad is. All right, so I don't see any other questions here or things marked as questions. Maybe I should go into the non-questions. I don't know if I can even do that, just to make sure. And see, I see some other questions here that weren't flagged as questions. Jeez. Yeah, so that's why I was requesting this. Stewart says the CS profile is worse than a root canal. Was my joke. Funny. I heard it from someone else, but maybe they stole your joke. Here we go. Helene Rutledge, if you're awarded a federal direct unsubsidized loan, should that be used before other assets? Hard to tell. I mean, the rates are so low that to me it's like negligible, but a lot of people do agree with what you just asked to use it up first. Gene, is there a way to get an estimate on a FAFSA EFC before it gets released in the fall? There's a FAFSA forecaster, and each school has a net price calculator posted on its website. So I would avail yourself of both. And if you're, if you're working with us, we calculate that. So if anyone's interested, the offer is still open. Just click on that black "Yes, I want to get started" button, or you can go to booklockwood.com. Michelle, could it hurt you to fill out the FAFSA each year if your financial situation gets better? Well, you'd be reevaluated for aid if you fill out a FAFSA, but if you don't fill it out, you won't get any money. So it can't really hurt, as far as I can tell. SV says, so great. Thank you. You're welcome. Maria Donahue, question, if using a home equity and moving equity to an exempt asset, you mentioned it should be liquid. Isn't it then not exempt? No, those are two separate things. A lot of exempt assets tend to be not liquid, but there are some that are. Like there's some life insurance policies that are more like a CD. And this is me talking out of school here. I'm an amateur on this. So in other words, yes, it's not liquid like a CD for 12 months, but then you can access it. Gail, how do you tell if a school requires a CSS profile? Yeah, they should tell it on your website, on the school's website. You're going to have to click around a little bit, just warning you, but they'll tell you the financial aid process somewhere. Janine Timpone says, thank you. You're welcome. Reza, if parents have a trust account, is this considered an asset? Yes. But if it's not accessible, for example, there's different types of trusts. So depending on the trust, you can explain it away if it's not really something that you can use as a resource to pay for college. Richard, my child has received their aid offer for 2021. Can you help with the appeal? I unfortunately can't do that because I'm just too busy with my regular clients doing that. But I do have a class and some materials, and it does include a review of, and me kind of punching up your appeal. So I'm just going to put that in here. If you go to appealsclass.com, if I'm doing this right, that is like having me help you. I just ask you to do 70% of the work yourself, and then I come in at the end. So check that out if you want. Maria Donahue, important question. How do we find out cost of your services? Does that mean the other questions weren't important, Maria? I can tell you the range, but I can't give you a complete answer without talking to you first, because it depends on what program you fit into or that you want. So the range, it also depends on when you start with us. So people start in 9th grade, there's more of an investment than people start in 11th grade. So to do only the financial aid component is $2,500, and a lot of juniors, to do the whole comprehensive consulting package can be more than $12,000 if you're working with someone on my team, and I'm a little bit more for the few clients that I'm still currently taking on and closing out on any day now. So it's a wide range depending on, those are just averages. Most people are in the middle somewhere, but it's a range. Angela, is negotiating with a public university worth it for merit? Some schools will negotiate. Many won't. I just did one for University of Delaware recently. They came up a little bit. Gene, weren't able to flag your question. Okay, well, there's a way to mark as a question. There's a little question mark dingy thing that you click. Beverly Marshak, thank you for the excellent presentation. You are welcome. My pleasure. Michelle says, thank you. I'll be in touch. All right. Not actual touching, remember. Okay. That's still funny. Same joke over and over. Carrie says, thank you. You are welcome. Brent, you're welcome. Gene, if you own a co-op, is the equity treated the same as a house or a condo? It is, but I make arguments frequently that a co-op is a lot less liquid, a lot harder to sell because you've got the co-op board and all sorts of other BS to deal with. So I try to knock that down. But generally, in the formulas, it is. Andy Lockwood says appealsclass.com. Jeanette says awesome presentation. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Richard, thanks. Michelle, does it make more sense for a college student to emancipate and file their own individual taxes? So the short answer is yes, but that's so hard to do. I rarely see that. It's a complicated legal proceeding. Some people swear that they've done it and it works. I just don't know anyone who's attempted to do that. You have to prove that you're not being supported by anyone else, all sorts of other stuff. But it could be worth it, yeah. Maria Donahue, funny. All these questions and answers are amazing. Okay, good. Yeah, thank you, by the way, everybody, for participating, because I love doing this. Gail says, thanks, Andy and Pearl. Pearl, thank you. Not just from Gail, but from me. Maria, Melissa, great question. We've been considering giving our son the boot just for this reason. The emancipation. Yeah, okay. There could be other reasons. Lori Chang, you are welcome. Song, you're welcome. Aaron, you're welcome. And Parvati, thanks, Andy, you're the best. Thank you very much. Angela Wang, can you get more money if two kids go to the same college? Yeah, the answer is currently yes, and as of now in 2023, no, but that could change. You're welcome, Gene. And last question here for Vinod. Does rolling over 401k plan to a Roth negatively impact your EFC? Okay, that's a good one to end up on. The short answer is that's treated as income on your tax return when you do that. That's my understanding as an amateur accountant as well. So therefore, it inflates your income, and then ergo will artificially inflate your expected family contribution. I always make the argument that, look, this isn't real income. We're just transferring money from one type of account to another. I just had to pay some taxes on it. So it's not like we got this influx of cash in and all of a sudden I had more money to be able to use to pay for college. So it does count against you, but I always try to explain it away in such a manner that the financial aid office will understand that. That is not too complicated an explanation the way I just said it. So usually that works, but sometimes you get people in financial aid who don't really understand common sense. And I'm going to leave it at that before I get too angry and offensive. Okay, so we're done. So thanks a lot, and I'll talk to some of you. Again, you know how to reach me if you have any questions about potentially working together. I really do enjoy doing these, and not just because of the costumes, but because of all you guys who have the great questions, keeps me on my toes, and lets me know what you're thinking so I can help you best. So have a great night, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.